of the Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Today's meeting is being televised. Today we'll continue our study on the challenges faced by senior women with a focus on the factors contributing to their poverty and vulnerability. For this, we welcome on our first panel from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, we have Catherine Scott, who is a senior researcher. And from the International Longevity Centre of Canada, we have Margaret Gillis, President, as well as Kiran Rabaru, who is the Board Chair. We'll begin with testimony, and we'll begin with 7 minutes each, starting with Catherine Scott. Go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you so very much. And thank you to the entire committee. As we said, my name is Catherine Scott, and I'm a senior researcher with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives here in Ottawa. I'm also the proud mother of Charlotte, who was thrilled to attend the committee on Tuesday as part of the delegation with Daughters of the Vote. That was completely thrilling for her. Now, I can't promise to match the eloquence and the passion of the young woman that spoke to you on Tuesday, but I am looking forward to talking about the economic challenges facing older women today in Canada. Poverty and economic insecurity is a unique hardship for older women, particularly when combined with the many overlapping challenges of aging, such as chronic illness, loss of mobility, providing care for a spouse, grandchildren, or both, the loss of community support. And given that Canada's population is aging, the gaps in our system of public supports for seniors will directly affect ever-widening numbers of people. Today, I would argue seniors are sometimes portrayed as a well-off generation that benefits overly much from generous government supports at the expense of younger Canadians. This narrative ignores, I would argue, the realities of large inequalities in income and wealth in Canada, particularly among seniors, many of whom remain in poverty despite the positive impact of CPP and OAS-GIS, and it also ignores the very large reality of large disparities between men and women. Age and gender are only two of the many intersecting factors, such as race, conjugal status, employment, sexual identity, that impact economic security. But it's the intersection of these experiences and identities that reveal the challenges women face and what's needed by way of solution. So, in my short presentation, and it will be short, I'm going to point out what we know and give you some thoughts about where we think what's needed by way of building out supports for this important group. So, here's what we know. Seniors' poverty has increased since the mid-1990s, reaching 15.4% in 2017. That's according to the Canadian Income Survey. Rates of poverty are higher among senior women than among senior men. In Canada, in 2017, almost 600,000 older women lived in poverty as compared to 340,000 men. Rates of poverty, again, among women are higher in marginalized communities. The census gives us great information about this. We know, for example, that older Indigenous women, those over age 65, 1/4 of those women live in poverty. The figure among women who have just immigrated to Canada over age 65 is 23%. So women in these communities face greater risk. And we know as well that women who live alone are at particular risk. That they are 4 times more likely to be poor than women living with a spouse or other relatives. Indeed, senior women make up over 2/3 of all seniors living in poverty, and they make up over 70% of all singles living in poverty. But there's another large group we need to pay attention to. These are a large group of women, and seniors generally, who live with incomes just above the poverty line. More than half, that's 57% of all older women had incomes of after-tax incomes of less than $25,000 a year in 2017, as compared to 38% of men. And of this group, 2/3 of women had incomes between $15,000 and $25,000 a year. So we are talking about the majority of senior women in Canada living on very modest incomes, not the groups hightailing it down to Florida and the like. We are talking about people living on very modest incomes, perhaps just above, but certainly not much higher. And so what this tells us is that many have little income above and beyond what's available through basic pensions. So the basic OAS-GIS and a modest CPP, depending on their work history. And it also tells us why, for instance, that core housing need is so acutely high among older women, and particularly women living on their own, and why many face such untenable choices each day of paying for the high cost of housing, medication, food, or other basics. So it's perhaps not surprising that we've seen an uptick in employment among seniors. Certainly, 1 in 10 in 2018, according to the Labour Force Survey, 1 in 10 women over age 65 was engaged in the paid labour market. And that's up from 3.2% in the year 2000, so that's quite significant. And we've also seen quite a startling increase in the employment rates of women aged 55 to 64. Indeed, employment is up 18 percentage points among women 55 to 59 between 2000 and 2018. That's 18 percentage points. And it's up 22 percentage points among women aged 60 to 64. So quite a significant increase of labor market for this particular group. But I would argue that it won't be enough. Increased rates of employment certainly won't be enough to offset inadequate pension coverage, and it won't be enough to offset woefully low levels of retirement savings. The difference between income at retirement among those who have a pension and those who do not is stark. 30%, for instance, of Canadians between the age of 50 and 64 have no RRSPs or other similar assets. 18% have no savings or private pensions at all. So women, and in particular women, struggle on incomes that are considerably low for potentially very long periods of time. Women are doubly disadvantaged in this regard, first because of their work histories, and secondly because of the sizable and persistent and damaging gender weight pay gap. Women are still more likely to take time out of paid work to care for young children, ill or disabled family members, or elderly parents. And they are more likely to work fewer hours at lower wages for the same reasons. Recent research, and you'll have seen any number of studies in the papers of late, look at the motherhood wage penalty, and it paints a grim picture. Women's earnings fall steeply after having a child, and they never fully recover. And this, of course, influences their pension coverage and benefit levels much further their entire life down the road. So what would it take then to enhance the economic security of older women? Promoting labor market participation has certainly garnered some attention at the OECD and the like. There was actually an FPT committee not too long ago that was looking this. I'm going to let's cut to the 3 and then we can come back to it in discussions. But I would argue that's a quixotic. I don't think that trying to increase labor market participation will necessarily deliver the bang for given the scale of the need. What really we need a strong public infrastructure of public supports, such as affordable housing and pharmacare, as well as strategies to address the conditions in the working conditions in the low-wage labor market and the like, in order to achieve a foundation to provide greater security. And I will stop there, and we can talk about the other things later. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to Margaret Gillis. You're going to be presenting?
Yes, I am.
Margaret will be presenting for 7 minutes. When I start rolling up my pen, we're getting close to the end, okay?
Okay, thank you. Old bag, geezer, old maid, little old lady, babushka, old crone. It's depressing to Google synonyms for older women and try to grasp the rampant ageism embedded in our society against our mothers, daughters, sisters, partners, and ourselves. It's a sad reality, as older women are often stereotyped and overlooked here in Canada and around the world. This was clearly evident a few weeks ago at the United Nations 63rd Commission on the Status of Women, where older women were blatantly ignored, even at the international epicenter of human rights. So I'm delighted to be here today to learn that the Standing Committee has taken the time to look at the issues faced by older women in Canada. Thanks to all of you for your important work. I should begin by explaining that the International Longevity Centre is a human rights-based organization focused on the needs of older persons. And as such, all of our interventions today will be viewed through a human rights lens. ILC Canada is partnered with the Life Research Institute at the University of Ottawa and is part of a global alliance of 16 countries that was the brainchild of the famous geriatrician, Dr. Robert Butler, who coined the term ageism back in 1969. Ageism is defined as a combination of prejudicial attitudes towards older people, old age, and aging itself. Like all isms, ageism penetrates and destroys, it belittles and patronizes, and it results in the loss of autonomy and dignity. Ageism creates barriers to health, financial resources, education, employment, and financial and social and economic justice. In fact, all the issues that you have listed for today's discussion are negatively impacted by ageism. Older women face a double jeopardy of ageism and sexism, and this can become triple or quadruple jeopardy when racism, homophobia, disability, and Indigenous identity are added to the mix. So my first recommendation is that today's discussion result in a strategic plan to counter ageism and for Canada to lead a United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. My colleague has been talking about poverty, which also has a huge detrimental impact on older women. We know that 16% of older women live in poverty and that the median income for older men is 1.3 times higher than for older women. This disparity leads to significant financial stress for older women. We know that women live longer than men, yet they have earned and saved less than men over their careers. Many have worked in lower paid service jobs with fewer hours and have had leave periods to raise children and to care for aging family members. To mitigate this, we recommend action on pay equity, including policy and investments that support educational training for women and provide support for caregivers. We must ensure GIS and OAS policies do not negatively impact older women, and that every effort be made to find and register those who are eligible for programs. Now, cardiovascular disease, strokes, malignancies, osteoporosis, cognitive and psychiatric illnesses are the most frequent and often most devastating issues in older age. Health issues, excuse me. Older women, as I mentioned, live longer than men and consequently are more likely to develop chronic illness. Case in point, 7.1% of Canadians suffer from dementia, but 2/3 of those are older women. The burden for caring for dementia largely falls on women, which may result in significant mental, physical, and financial stress. Policies that enhance caregivers' quality of life must be a vital part of our healthcare system. Older women often fail to receive the same quality or amount of health care as men. For instance, women with heart disease receive fewer diagnostic procedures and fewer treatments, and women with kidney disease receive dialysis later than men and get fewer transplants. This gender disparity can literally be fatal for women. Understanding the differences in disease frequencies, presentations, and response is vital for optimal health for older women. There is also a paucity of research on mental as well as physical health for aging women, and this needs to change. The Mental Health Commission of Canada notes 3 key factors for effective health: prevention, health promotion, early detection. These are essential components of a sustainable, effective, and equitable healthcare system. Finally, we realize that the cost to society of not acting on these recommendations is dire. Now, appropriate housing is a basic human right for all Canadians, and for older people, that means clean, accessible housing that meets their needs for independence, dignity, safety, and social participation. Yet, here is the reality for older women in Canada. 27% are in core housing need, meaning that after housing costs, they don't have enough money for food, medication, and transportation. Women make up 7 out of 10 Canadians living in residential care, which can lead to the loss of social and community connections, self-esteem, autonomy, and choice. Lastly, to our national shame, we are witnessing an increase in first-time homelessness among older women. While we applaud the national housing strategy, it needs to better address the housing needs of older women. Finally, ILC Canada and other like-minded organizations are vigorously advocating for a United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. We believe a United Nations Convention would be transformative. Why? Because research-based evidence is clear. Conventions work because they better the lives of rights recipients. A UN would see older people as rights holders and codify those rights in a single document. A convention would act as an anti-discriminatory tool to challenge negative stereotypes. Rights conventions improve government accountability and transparency and require the active participation of older persons. They raise public awareness and create better, healthier societies where older people prosper. Canada has a long and proud history of leading and supporting conventions, and there is no reason for our country not to work to better the lives of older Canadians. the vast majority of whom we know are women, along with the lives of other people around the globe. So I'm going to leave you with some thoughts to ponder. At what age does a person lose his or her rights? At what age should a person be without preventative health care or access to education or training? At what age should a person lose autonomy, self-determination, and choice? And at what age should a person be less protected from discrimination, violence, and abuse? Well, the answer is never. And as we grow older, our rights should be enhanced, not diminished or lost. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're now going to start off with our first round of questioning, and we're going to have questioning up for 7 minutes each. We're going to start with Selma. Selma, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to the witnesses for important insights and the data which you have collected. My first question is for Ms. Scott. In the data and research that you have gathered, have you developed any data on differing outcomes and challenges faced specifically by the minority senior women? And how much is the intersectionality considered when it comes to making decisions on the seniors' issues?
Well, I think that's a great question, and certainly something that has, as a researcher, is something that I've been looking at quite closely. The fact of the matter is, of course, is that we have extraordinarily great resources of information in Canada, but too often the times that they actually are either provided at the national level and they don't provide the depth and granularity needed to really paint a really nuanced picture of groups such as, racialized women or newcomers to Canada, Indigenous women. And that's certainly, I know, something that StatsCan has on its radar. I would say there's lots more to do and investment needed to enhance the information that we have to certainly provide not only sort of policy levels at the national maker, but actually to support community decision makers as well. I think it's really vital to think about the information and the sources that we need to support informed public policy. I was able to certainly generate some information from the census. The census, as you know, is done once every 5 years, and that really is probably not enough. I think there's a lot of great administrative data. Too often provides some information, but is not, again, it's not publicly available. So we really have a challenge in front of us to think through what's needed to support informed policy and reform in this matter.
Ms. Gillis, would you like to add something to this? Or
No, I
have
think you've covered that well.
Okay. I was looking into the report, a May 2017 report from the Wellesley Institute looked at diversity, aging, and intersectionality in Ontario home care. We know that home care is going to be an increasingly important part of the seniors' care metrics. So as we know that in centers like Toronto, minority seniors accounting for an increasing portion of the senior population. I represent one of the Toronto ridings. And in Toronto, according to this report, Toronto experienced 131% increase in the number of visible minority seniors between 2006 and 2011. Yeah. So for Canada, it was 31%. Overall, but specifically for Toronto, it was 131%. So yet the report found minority seniors have cultural, language, and other barriers to accessing publicly funded home care. They were less likely to access publicly funded home care, more likely to rely on private care or family, and more likely to have unmet home care needs. Are we doing what we need to do in order to address the intersectionality needs in the senior care delivery? What do we need to be doing that we are not doing? So, Ms. Gillis, maybe you would like to start?
I'm happy to start with that, and you may want to start with that. I think you have put your finger on a big problem, and I think there's a couple of issues that we need to unpack within the comments you've made. First of all, getting the information out and unpacking the availability of the public system for people who are not accessing it. And I think there's lots of history in different government programs where there are programs to go out and actually find those people and bring them in so that they're getting access to it. GIS and OAS is one example. Right now, the HRSDC is looking at innovative ways to access people who aren't getting at GIS and OAS. And so there are models, and I think we should be thinking about that for the folks you're talking about, particularly if there's 131% not getting access in Toronto. That's just crazy. Second of all, that's an area where we really need to look at funding, and we really need to look at how the system works, so that it covers people's needs. So I think research needs to be done on that, and I also think we need to start looking at better programming. So that's my 2 cents worth. Did you want to add anything more?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Ms. Syed. This is such an important question. So let me just take it one notch above where you started. Every single person in this world needs 3 things to have a good quality of life. We need a good place to live. We need something useful, purposeful to do, and someone to love. Okay. If we don't have one of those 3 things, our quality of life suffers. I think there's lots of models in this world that do better than Canada. Japan has a really good model for community care. Even the United Kingdom, amongst the Western world, actually has some good models where especially minority groups are served better. I think and just building on what Margie just said, we do need to look at those and improve our system of social housing and supports in the community closer to home. Thank you.
Scott, would you like to add?
I was listening to that, and I grew up in not outside of the GTA, and it is so true that in our large urban centers, I mean, we are really facing a home care crisis, and partly it's aging, but I think, the extraordinary diversity, certainly of the GTA community, is putting pressures on a system that simply has not been designed or is adequately equipped to deal with the need, either providing support to all diversity families in their homes or, providing institutional support. I mean, it's interesting that in terms of response, actually the beds, it's been in, home care or nursing homes, for instance, are actually even arguably less accessible today with the rising pressures on them than they were even 20 years ago. We have not kept pace. I think investments here are critical because certainly women's unpaid labor it continues is drawn upon. Caregivers are on the front lines of this crisis. They suffer their own health. That's certainly been my experience in my family. And, to do nothing is to continue to exploit the labor of women. This is a very concrete black and white example of where failures of public supports and certainly imagination and visions leaves families across the country hanging. And it's acute in communities where institutionally or historically there have not been services to serve those communities that reflect cultural needs or their languages, particularly in senior care. There's going to be a period of catch-up, but I mean, it's, putting our head in the sand is simply not the answer here. We have to really make a commitment to understanding the role of public supports and services to families as they go through this transition to do it and try to enhance the quality of life of seniors. I think Canada has, as Kieran was saying, has fallen back and is behind. This is complicated by the federal-provincial jurisdiction. Obviously, home care and many of these supports clearly are in the provincial domain. But, certainly we have transfers here from the federal government. Yes, okay, we're wrapping up. Okay. Yeah. I completely agree.
Thank you so much. We're now
attention.
going to move over to Kelly Leach for her 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for taking the time to come and present to us today. I represent a riding that has become essentially the Victoria of Ontario. I have Collingwood, Wasaga Beach. 3 of the 10 oldest demographic postal codes in the country are within my riding. So I'm acutely aware of some of the issues. The thing that comes up the most and I hear about, possibly because I'm a physician myself, is access to healthcare. Wait times.
Yes.
The idea of waiting 24 months to have a hip replacement and that impact on quality of life. And the issue is that the governments, whether it be provincial or federal, don't seem to be accountable for their care, even though they take responsibility for it. I was wondering if you could comment on that and what you think might be some of the solutions around creating that accountability. Maybe it should be something in the Act. Maybe it should be something with respect to how the provinces or the federal government should be approaching this. I know when we had health transfers in the past, we put accountability around what it would be for. Do you have some comments on that for seniors?
Start.
Do you mind?
No.
Thank you for that fantastic question. And
You're welcome.
I really think that this is such an important point that we need to spend more time discussing this. But just in the short time that we have here, so Margie and I actually had written to the minister when the health accord was being rolled out about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. With some recommendations on how we can make our healthcare system better, moving forward. And we basically divided the recommendations into several parts, but the main one was looking at primary prevention to keep people who are healthy to stay well, looking at how we can keep people at risk, providing them with supports and care and wellness and in their own communities so that they don't fall into the third category, which is the ones who are actually sick, and then providing good supports for people with mental and physical illnesses closer to their homes, within their community of supports and health, but not as much in the hospitals. I think that we need to keep people away from hospitals as much as possible by providing communities of care and support, social transportation, poverty, all of these social determinants of health closer to their home. Because that is where the money is being spent at the moment. And for every dollar we put into the healthcare system, we're only getting about 20 cents at the bottom.
Right.
So that is the bigger issue, but we need more time to talk about the details of that.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to hear about the details
Sure,
associated
absolutely.
with it.
We'd be happy to talk to you about that.
I have a second question for all of you with regards to the point that I think you made, Mr. Rabahuru, on purposeful.
Kieran's easier.
Kieran is fine. With regards to purposefulness in one's life, and I don't know if each of you maybe have a comment on a specific program or a specific idea that you would recommend to the government. You know, I've sat on both sides of the house. It's much more helpful when we know specifically what you're asking for as opposed to the broad generalities of trying to boil the ocean. And so if you have something very specific that you know already exists, maybe should be augmented, or something specific that you think would be valuable, that would be helpful. And maybe, Catherine, you could start because you hadn't answered a question for myself yet. By the way, your daughter was fabulous on Tuesday.
Thank you so
That
much.
would be great.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Some specific recommendations. Well, I'll start with we're
You'd
talking.
have one.
Oh, even one. Okay, just one. I'm talking. Okay, so we're talking about home care. I would say I would encourage the government to increase the amount of monies available to the provinces and territories for home care through the established transfer, and look at establishing a national care strategy that ensures, including conditionality, which is what you're talking about, that ensures the equitable provision of supports and services across the country. We've moved away from. We seem to be in an era where the federal government no longer directs its cash to the provinces. Certainly the CCPA has always taken the position that it's wholly appropriate to attach conditions for the expenditure of the money to promote equitable outcomes.
Great. Margaret?
My suggestion would be that we do something specific on social isolation and looking at the impact on older people. So what kind of programs work? They've got some great ones in the UK and other places in the world that we can mimic. In the UK, the doctors are now writing prescriptions for you to go out and join poetry groups or go to the, see the art
get a
gallery.
longer list.
Yeah, and so there's specific things. So I think that's a huge one. It has huge health outcomes. You'll know as a doctor how important that is. It's like smoking, being socially isolated is like smoking cigarettes. So we really need to get at that.
And so I'm a physician as well. I'm a family doctor and a geriatric psychiatrist. I co-chair the Canadian Coalition for Seniors Mental Health. And there's a program we've just put out called A Fountain of Health. And we basically focus on three things, on brain health and wellness, which have to do with social isolation, physical health, and keeping your mind-brain active. Those are the three areas we need to focus on to keep people well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I assume I'm done. I've got another minute and a half. Aren't you people lucky? The one thing I guess would also like to ask you has to do along the lines of what are those barriers to the integration? So I have literally tens of thousands of seniors in my riding. I hear about things as simple as transportation costs. But I'm confident in saying there's probably a laundry list of others issues. I live in a large rural riding. We have particular challenges with regards to seniors being able to integrate into social programming. Outside of transportation costs, do you have other recommendations for those of us here at committee and the government on how that can be overcome? You're going to have about 15 seconds.
Sure. Okay. Well, very quickly, when I come from government, and when I was in government, I was involved in creating something called the Age-Friendly Communities Program, and there's a checklist that exists for that. And some of the issues you just talked about are on that checklist, and I'll just give you an example. On social participation, you need to make sure there's venues for events and activities which are conveniently located, accessible and well lit, and easily reached by public transportation. Now, that might be a problem in a rural area, but there are ways around that if you look at community support. If you think about something like transportation, there's a whole list here, making sure, of course, first off, that the costs are accessible, particularly when we think about older women and the poverty levels we're talking about. So I can leave you with that list if that's at all helpful, but there's lots of great examples in there for all levels of government.
You know, those are the things that we're looking at on the committee. Thank you very much.
Specific.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're now going to pass the floor over to Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, you have 7 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Et,
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our 3 witnesses. I'll be speaking in French, so I'm going to give you the time to put your earpieces on. Thank you to all 3 of you for being here. I would like to ask a question of Ms. Scott. First of all, you dealt with the issue of access to medication. We had a round table that involved the senior citizens in my riding, Salaberry, and they said it was very difficult for them to have access to certain medication because it was quite expensive. Even though we're in Quebec, there are certain medications that are not cheap and are very expensive for elderly people to access, given that they don't have very high salaries and they live in a rural area. Senior citizens don't necessarily have a car, so they don't have the transportation, as my colleague said. Have you very quickly looked at a universal health insurance? And what could you tell us about a system like that? Is there a model that exists elsewhere in the world that we could apply in Canada to use that model?
Certainly, the cost of medication is a pressing concern for many seniors, most of whom, just reviewing on their past histories, may or may not have private coverage. There are huge gaps in terms of what the public system covers. As a consequence, seniors who are facing high rents or transportation challenges and the like, have precious few dollars to devote to medication, and it remains a paralyzing concern for many. I think certainly, I believe you're talking about a pharmacare, national pharmacare program. It's a critical piece of infrastructure. It's really a huge gap in the Canadian healthcare system, and it does impact detrimentally, proportionally, seniors to a greater extent. Our organization has been advocating for a universal single-payer healthcare model. We understand certainly that there's an interim report out from Dr. Hoskins, and that the government itself is looking at a model, putting it forward. We would encourage our own research as supported a single-payer universal system in order to provide a foundation for everyone, as opposed to a fill-in-the-gap system, which was, I guess, another proposed model. And I'm happy to follow up with our particular recommendations around the financing of that and put you in touch with my colleague who did that economic modeling.
mm-hmm. Et est-ce que vous pouvez nous parler justement des avantages économiques?
You talk to us about the economic benefits of that. What are the advantages of that model?
Our models, and I'm certainly not the person, I'm sorry, I'm not have all of the details at hand, but certainly the proposal we put forward suggests that in terms of the economic costs, it delivers the largest number of benefit to the largest number of people, that it certainly is a more efficient model, and obviously takes advantage of, steps to create a national formulary and the like. There are many studies, certainly some of my colleagues in our provincial offices are looking at the increasing costs of medication, and as it disproportionately affects older women. And so we really do strongly recommend that action in this area would have a profound impact on seniors' quality of life.
Merci. Ma prochaine question.
Thank you. My next question is for Ms. Gillis. I have an organization in my riding. There's a municipality in the Upper St. Lawrence, which is the second poorest riding area in Quebec and in Canada. They have a center, though, for services, and it was explained to me that the principal concern in the rural areas is isolation, as you said. there's a serious lack of transportation. You talked about a list of recommendations for transport to try to mitigate this problem. I'd like to know more about it because the only contact that some of our elderly people have is with with an organization that goes from door to door. But the cost of the transportation is extremely high. And most of the people who use this form of transportation are older. 75% of them are women who live alone in housing that costs more than 30% of whatever salary they earn. Do you have ideas about what the federal government could do to mitigate this? There are no federal programs aside from New Horizons that can deal with this type of thing. So what kind of mandate could we have?
I think there would be a number of programs, and again, I would start off by suggesting looking at options in other countries because it's always best to see what's worked. That having been said, we have some interesting programming for children in our country, particularly that are federal programming that came out of when Canada signed the United Nations Rights on the Child back in the early 90s. And at that time, the government put together programming for really at-risk children, and those exist across the country in resource centers all over the country. I think there's a possibility to look at how perhaps older people could be serviced by some of those programs that already exist. Now, again, it's a cost issue. You have to fund it. But one of the things that those children's programs do is in rural areas, they look at ways in which to get children into their centers by having some of them have vans and different programming like that. So there are models that exist in the country and there are models that exist internationally. And I think there are ways you could build on that.
Est-ce que vous avez des exemples au niveau? Vous dites qu'il y a des exemples.
You say that there are international examples. Could you share that with us?
I believe that some of them, again, are in, you always sort of look to the Nordic countries and England, some programming in Australia. So, we could get back to you maybe with some of those examples.
Oui, s'il vous plaît. Et vous avez...
Yes, please. And both of you have mentioned federal transfers in that they have been reduced from 6% to 3%. Do you think they should be reestablished at 6% or say at another higher level to be able to fill the gaps that exist in terms of home care, in terms of mental health care? We know that there are women who don't go out to get a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's.
Two of the panelists.
Social spending as a percentage of GDP in Canada is at relatively historic lows. I think that there is fiscal capacity to increase support and spending for Canadian seniors and women in particular.
Thank you very much. We're now going to pass it over and we will have Rachel. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Merci pour les présentations.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentations. They were excellent. I'd like to ask Ms. Gillis a question about access to justice. And in view of the fact that you presented in English, I'll ask my question in English.
A little bit on the increased incidence of fraud and in particular, to older women, and how the system, the judicial system, is able to support older women in accessing judicial recourse. It's extremely costly to hire lawyers. I wonder if you could comment a little bit on access to justice and access to legal representation.
Brought up two really great points there. The first point being the increase, particularly with social media and different ways in which fraud is happening, and ways in which the justice system needs to catch up with that, and particularly the targeting of older people around that. So point number one, absolutely something needs to be done on that. We need to think that through a little more. Those are the kinds of things that the Justice Department, if we're talking federal government, ought to be looking at and thinking about. And I don't know if they are right at the moment. But the second second part of your questions in terms of, accessing the system, well, we've heard the levels of poverty, and we know right off the bat, they're not going to be accessing the system, if you're living below, close or below the poverty line. There's a whole issue in terms of how do we access that? How do you get to legal aid if it's available? Are they extended for other issues? So I think it's a whole new frontier that you're talking about there, and that we need to be thinking about both how to stop it and how to support those that have already been impacted by it through economic supports and other supports.
Rachel, I'll just add one quick thing to that. It's not just from outside. We actually have a saying in our business: when there's a will, there's family, and it happens not infrequently. We see it a lot. So we just have to be very protective of our aging population.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Ms.
This isn't my area, but I am struck by how vulnerable seniors are. I say that as a daughter of two aging parents. I've just lost my mother, and I'm just overwhelmed about the number of entreaties and so forth. And I think that part of the challenge is seniors are isolated. They can't work it through in communities. And I was struck as well about the usefulness of senior centers and hubs where people come together to problem solve, and that through those social connections actually are not as vulnerable to these sorts of things, or are able to share knowledge if they don't have family in town and the like, particularly online. Bringing seniors together is such an extraordinary strategy for tackling many of these types of challenges. So I would just add that.
Yeah, back to social isolation.
It is. People who are isolated are victimized. It's
and
quite.
There are many models of that in the world.
If we could talk a little bit more in depth about the discrimination that you raised at the beginning of your presentation, Ms. Gillis, I was wondering if you had any recommendations for changing or enhancing our education system, because I think in order to prevent or change the culture around the way we perceive older women, we have to start at a very young age.
I absolutely agree with that. And that was why one of my first recommendations was that we look at a program to address ageism. It's a really hidden ism, and one that people don't think about, and very, very embedded. If you just watch a few commercials and think about ageism, and just you will be shocked at what you see when you really focus on what they're saying. It would never be said about any other group in society. So I agree, yes, we should be thinking about it in schools, but we need to get it, just lifted off at some level somewhere. And so I think calling it what it is, addressing it, educating people about what we need to do to stop it is really, really, really important. And so for me, that was why that was my first recommendation. We really need to have some kind of programming where we actually call it what it is and get people to understand that they're doing it in their everyday life, just like we have to counter racism or sexism or any of the other evil isms.
Sorry, the difference being it will affect 100% of us.
Yeah,
absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
If I have time for one more question, Madam Chair. Ms. Scott, my experience in my community in Outremont is to see that women who are still in the workforce between 55 and 65 and even older really enjoy their experience in the workforce. It provides them a social network. It gives them a sense of continued contribution to society. I 100% agree. Pay equity is a huge issue. But I wonder if you have any evidence of it actually being a positive thing that women are staying in the workforce a little bit longer.
Well, I think there's no question that women who are able to continue in paid employment and to pursue certainly and have decent working conditions and the like, it's extraordinarily beneficial to them down the road, that they benefit socially, they benefit in a myriad of ways. My argument around whether we can increase levels of employment among, as a sort of a be-all, end-all, I'm just saying, absent investment in affordable housing, absent investment in social, I don't think it'll deliver that kind of, that it won't deliver that outcome. because the truth is, and it's interesting, there's sort of getting women's economic participation is a pretty hot topic these days, and clearly we've seen this extraordinary uptick in the certainly women nearing retirement age in terms of their attachment to labor force. There's arguably a good deal of room. They're still 10 points off of men's labor force participation in that group. But it's interesting. The other things that women are dealing with in that at that time are certainly onset. Women, as Marky was saying, have challenges with chronic illness and the like. This is the time when they may well have elder care responsibilities. They may actually be supporting their children, their adult children. So it's a time when they can enjoy being attached, but they have extraordinary responsibilities and pressures as well. Mm-hmm. And we see in the information on from the social survey and the like, talk about the number of women who leave paid employment because they have no choices, or they quit jobs to move elsewhere to provide care and support. So I think actually women should be encouraged to engage in the paid labor market. That is extraordinarily important to their autonomy, voice on all sorts of, but it's not a realistic strategy if we don't actually fully understand the complexity of their lives and the pressures that are being brought to bear and take a holistic approach. And the pen's rolling. So yes, we're good.
Thank you very much. We're now going to start our second round, and we're going to move over to Dave. Dave, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the panel for their excellent testimony as well, too. Doctor, you said somewhere to live, three rules every human being needs, or three things every human being needs. Somewhere to live, something to do, someone to love. Is that a personal observation, or is that a study?
No, I wish I could claim ownership of that. I've heard it from someone else. So.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a study find, but it's great. It's great information.
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. And Ms. Gillis, you paint a grim picture of what's happening to a lot of our seniors. I got to date myself. I think I served in this committee in the 39th Parliament, so it's been that long, and it's great to be back.
He's 40.
It's great to be back, but you talked about some of the issues that we confront with our seniors today, and they're grim. We know of these things too. But what happened? I mean, I began this by first dating myself, and I remember a time when seniors were cherished and looked after. And is this an indictment on our own culture? Is this something that we've just slipped into? What's happened?
Well, we have a youth-focused culture. I think that's pretty obvious. But, I wonder if we looked really closely before whether it wasn't there also. But I don't know offhand. But I would guess some of these prejudices have always been around. So I think what's really important now is to start to pull off the covers and reveal them. So, that was why, I wanted to bring to today some of the messaging in terms of moving forward and really calling ageism what it is, and thinking about the impact on older women in terms of just what you folks are doing here at the table, because that is such a larger portion of our senior population. I also think, besides doing some kind of a strategic plan to counter ageism, I think there's some really rich opportunities with moving forward on a United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons, and some of the research we have done, with our colleagues at the University of Ottawa and elsewhere around the world has really shown that is one tool that allows you to start putting a focus on what's happening to those particular groups.
Dr.
Can I just add to that? So thank you for your question. I think it's a really good point to pause and reflect. I'd like you to check your neighbors. I hope you have someone sitting next to you on both sides, because the bad news is that 1 out of the 3 of you will be demented by the time you're 80. The good news is it won't be you. It'll be whoever's sitting next to you. So if you believe what I just said, welcome to the world of denial, because we are supreme at denial. Nothing's going to happen to us. The difference is that in 1900, the average life expectancy was around 48. It is now 84. Okay? So people are living longer. We never expected to live this long. And I think that's been a huge shift. Medical advances have changed a lot, but people haven't changed that much. in the way our basic needs haven't changed, and yet we're not able to provide them the way we used to. Okay.
So the other question, and we talked about income. Unless the statistics have changed a number of years ago, and I'm talking maybe a couple of years ago, 63% of people in Canada just received CPP. Now, that doesn't apply to work or stay-home moms, but obviously the OAS and the GIS kicks in. My mother was one of those as well too. Do we have an unfair retirement system? If there's 63% of people in this country that just get CPP, is there something wrong with our retirement system? So lopsided?
Sorry, I think you mean in addition to OAS, GIS, because the proportion of seniors that receive OAS and GIS actually is in the 90%. In fact, it's closing.
Exactly.
So,
what I'm saying is that
okay.
when people retire,
absolutely.
63% of those only get CPP.
That's right, and very many fewer have access to as I mentioned, to private employment pensions and the like, and some have no assets and support at all, including in that. I mean, that number has changed. A lot of, as I said, it reflects the engagement and increased engagement of women in the labor force. But that's been, as you pointed out, that's been a trend, and women's labor force participation has been very high in Canada, actually, for many long years now. So there are still groups that play, and women, of course, as I mentioned, have different work histories. So absent that employment, they are incredibly impoverished and must rely either on provincial or family, extraordinarily vulnerable. Yes.
Excellent. Oh, sorry, it's 5. You are out of time. It's all good. Thank you very much. And for the last round, Emanuela, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
First of all, thank you to all of you for being here with us to discuss this really, really important issue today. I had actually moved to do this study in this committee because of the fact that so many of the seniors in my riding of Saint Laurent and in my community are excellent at getting the message across to me and at letting me know that there are still huge gaps and that we haven't filled their needs yet. So obviously, I think that our government is doing quite a bit to try to help meet some of those needs. When we look at the costs that seniors have, it's obviously the cost of living, the cost of rent or of, taxes for their homes, the cost of buying food, the cost of medication. We're trying to tackle it from an angle of pharmacare, which will eventually make it so that they don't have that cost of medication, and the National Housing Strategy, which will take care of a lot of the housing costs for many seniors. If there was something more that could be done, what is your priority? What would you say is the next thing that we haven't done yet that absolutely needs to be done next?
I would say you've pinpointed really important facets that would strengthen the economic security of seniors. Housing, the fact is, and I applaud the government on the National Housing Strategy, that the investment in the monies that are available in terms of the expansion of units, I understand the co-housing fund, for instance, would be 6,000 units a year. That's going to fall woefully short of what's needed. Most seniors, of course, do not live in subsidized housing. Even those that do still have considerably high expenses. Many more seniors are basically hanging on to their homes. I was struck by actually the extraordinary number of seniors that are living independently in all communities across the country, relatively isolated, without access or support. So I think additional investment to build out more units will be incredibly important, including supportive housing units that provide the supports, professional support needed for people dealing with dementia and the like. And I think the housing benefit, which we're still waiting for, again, will be very important for seniors, a large chunk of whom, certainly in centres like Montreal, rent and are facing, as I pointed out, very high core housing needs. So additional investments in housing would make a real difference for seniors.
I can't say all of it right. I have to actually come up with one. Okay, you've put me on the spot. I think probably trying to increase the wage gap is a really important piece for women because so much of other determinants of health fall out of that, and access to other things. So I'm kind of stealing Catherine's line, but I think there's also a number of other really key areas that can be done in the healthcare system. I think homelessness is important, and there are things that can be done right away on that. So poverty, healthcare system, and of course rights, because I'm a rights supporter.
I'll just add that, people, the single biggest loss in a person's life is their own health, but next to that, it's their spouse and their house. Okay, those are the three biggest. The wild card is your health. And as soon as that joker is played, it's game over. It could happen to any one of us today as we're going home. So I think you really need to provide early upstream care to keep people well, those of us who are well, to keep people well. But also we know the risk factors. We know the red flags that are going to get people into trouble. And there are, cognitive frailty, social frailty, mental health, red flags, and we can identify those people early and provide supports for them in their own home where they want to live. And we're not talking about expensive interventions. These are very basic, low-key interventions. And that's what's going to keep and keeping them out of the hospital, because that's, as soon as they go into a hospital bed or into a long-term care home, your costs are through the roof. Yeah. Those are the two things that take up the most money. So if we want to save money and provide good care, we need to do those things.
Thank you. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you to Catherine Scott, Margaret Gillis, and Kiran Rabaru. This has been an excellent panel. We are going to suspend for 2 minutes and call up our second panel. So if everybody, 2 minutes, we'll reconvene. I welcome the panelists up to their spots. Thank you very much. And if everybody could have their seats. Thank you. Today, I welcome you to the 136th meeting of the Standing Committee on the Status of Women. For our second hour, I am pleased to welcome as individuals, we have Lynn Licknick, who is from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and you will find her on our screen today, Mary Moody, as well as Lana Shriver. So we're going to begin with Lynn. Lynn, you have the floor for 7 minutes.
Very good. I understand that, being a senior, I have been invited to voice my experience as a homemaker. I was in a fortunate group. My husband was in a position where he could earn enough income so that I was free to take care of the home full time. As a high school student, I appreciated that I also was free to pursue a career. I actually spent 4 years in university and 1 year at a technical college. I did receive my diploma in nursing. Soon after, I met my husband. When we established our home, he left the choice entirely up to me whether I would work outside the home. I knew myself well enough to realize I could not handle both a career and taking care of the home well. As much as I liked the idea of working as a nurse, my first choice was to maintain a family home. At that time, my husband was working as an insurance sales manager and used home entertaining a fair amount to build up relationships. I was free then to help in this valuable PR work. I have found this to be a wonderful way to live. My husband was free to concentrate on providing for the family, knowing I had the home front covered. If a child was sick, no problem. I was home. While we lived in the city, the children could come home for a hot lunch. Almost always in the evening, the family could sit down together for a home-cooked meal. Our children did have some extracurricular activities, but not lots, so the schedule was seldom hectic. And yes, being a homemaker let me be free to volunteer. In the city, it was limited. We loved our home and neighbors in the city, but both Joseph and myself had been raised in rural settings. So when my husband was semi-retired, we made the move to an 80-acre country property. Here, we raised our younger children on this practical hobby farm. Here, we became much more involved in volunteering, Joseph in the Lions organization, which automatically meant I was assisting in their fundraisers and entertaining. Myself, I chose to volunteer in the senior home, providing activities, since I was very familiar with their ways. My parents had run a nursing home when I was growing up, and we lived among them. When the children were in elementary school, I could come and be a parent helper, which the children loved. In high school, I was on the Parent Advisory Council, which was more beneficial to me as I was able to be aware of what was happening inside those walls. Now, being in our small country church, our volunteering increased there, and Sundays could be a day of rest since I would be home to do the needed work during the week. The sad reality, which most everyone sees, is that volunteer clubs are folding for lack of volunteers. And gardening is our love, a huge 150 by 50-foot one, giving us healthy organic vegetables year long. No way could have I done that if I was working. It takes half the summer and more just to take care of it and all the produce. Yes, my CPP is embarrassingly low. It comes just from my bit of employment before marriage and help I gave my husband when he ran his personal insurance agency. We have built up some healthy RSP accounts for me, as well as a bit of tax-free accounts to support me as needed in the future. If my husband dies before me, my income will greatly diminish. But as my husband says to our children, he will leave them a mother who can come to visit but doesn't have to stay. We are very grateful for income splitting. This allows us to save some using the tax-free savings. We are ready then for the heavy expenses which invariably come, and hopefully to put away a bit for my future. My mom is 104. I think I might have a long future. We never raise children without making mistakes, but it is so satisfying to have been able to provide them a home with a parent who could always be there for them without outside work pressures. Yet, my friend's son and daughter-in-law are making huge financial sacrifices to be able to be involved in their children's lives on a daily basis. His income, his gross income, is healthy. Taxes and program support seem to be based on that gross income, yet it is the net income they're struggling to live on. I don't need a job outside the home to participate in the economic, social, and democratic life of Canada. We raise children to be leaders, to be good stewards of their finances and of the world they live in, to be active members of the society they live in, and to know how they can make an impact on the law and government in Canada. The way we raise our children is a full participation in the economic, social, and democratic life of Canada. As I said, I was very fortunate to be a relatively stress-free wife and mother.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Linick. I'm going to now pass the floor over to Mary Moody. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for inviting me. My name is Mary Moody, and I took time out from the workforce to raise my family. The object of my story is to set forth the reasons why I feel it's important to give encouragement and/or incentive to women who wish to take time out to make families their priority. I graduated from the Vancouver General Hospital as a registered nurse in 1963. I practiced in the case room, the delivery room, and on the gynecology ward. My co-workers were excellent, and I enjoyed working with the patients. I married my husband while he was an intern and was in the Navy at that time. Following his internship, we were posted to Comox on Vancouver Island. My intention was to start back to work in the hospital there until we had 4 children under the age of 3. To be very honest, we were complete failures at birth control. I realized then that it would become difficult to go back to work for some time. Thus, I became a stay-at-home mom with endless loads of laundry to do. My dream of going back to a career faded into the background. My husband's tour of duty ended, and we moved to Richmond so my mother could help me with the children. It was always our desire to live and work in a rural setting, and so we moved to Pemberton. We commuted between Richmond and Pemberton for 1 year to see if it was a viable option. Driving up the highway with 4 small children, a dog, and a cat, a rather exciting journey with 3 car-sick boys and 1 car-sick cat. My parents were horrified we were taking their grandchildren to the Wild West, and indeed we were. The children were too small for me to go back to work, and being at home I could become involved in the community. I lobbied for the first kindergarten in the area, meeting opposition from a council member who felt it was just a glorified babysitting service. I think you can all gather what sex he was. Pemberton was a farming community, and the children were separated by long distances, thus not having an opportunity to socialize and interact with each other. The town had a liquor store, but we did not have a kindergarten. I wrote to a Vancouver newspaper stating my opinion, and eventually the government saw fit to provide a kindergarten. I helped out at school functions, billeting children in our home who had come to play sports or join the school band, and involving myself in bake sales, sports days, etc. There was a need in our small community for extracurricular activities to bring children together. I was a brown owl for some years. I took my brownies on camping trips, hiking trips, and initiated several programs for the brownies to earn badges. I became involved in the Pony Club. This entailed a lot of organization with lessons and fun days. Fun days with races, ribbons, trophies, and a concession stand. Most of the village would turn out for these days and join in the fun, and it was a lot of fun. Eventually, I went back to work part-time in my husband's office. Besides bookkeeping, I was able to use some of my nursing skills: immunization, prenatal care, blood pressure checking, allergy injections, and so forth. We had a high incidence of diabetes in our area, and our office ran educational clinics. I would bake samples of good foods to use and advise them on how to cook healthy meals for diabetics. We left Pemberton as my husband became ill and subsequently took a 9-to-5 job in Nelson. I wanted to work in the local hospital, but the only option available to me was to work the night shift. Not for me, I'm not a night shift person. I decided it was time to change to a new career. I took and passed my real estate exams in Nelson. We then moved to Kamloops. I arrived in Kamloops with my shiny new real estate license and started working immediately. I had absolutely no knowledge of the layout of Kamloops. Initially, I studied maps of Kamloops to find where the house I was showing was and where the nearest schools, community centers, and churches were. I was then asked by a friend to go up to Sun Peaks Resort and market the projects up there. I loved this job. It meant I could ski quite a bit. We were aging and eventually felt that we should move closer to our family and ended up back where we started on Vancouver Island. As a senior, in looking back, I'm sorry I did not have a longer work experience as a nurse in a hospital setting, as I enjoyed that aspect of my career. There was no opportunity to collect a work pension or a larger CPP. Socially, it was a difficult time being out of the workforce, as I really had very little connection with the outside world, particularly when my children were very small. I worried that I could not carry on an intelligent conversation when my husband came home from work, and found it difficult to speak on interesting subjects to other adults. When we entertained, I felt a sense of not being in the loop, so to speak. We had no access to television or newspapers for many years, so I felt quite cut off from the world. More women today are entering the workforce for many reasons, and perhaps it's time for those who wish to stay home to have some encouragement and incentive. It is known that the formative years of a child are ages 1 to 4. There are benefits provided, but not for this length of time. We are not all cut from the same cloth, and as women, we will continue to question our choices. We need to feel we're doing something worthwhile, and if it is staying home with your family and contributing to your community, then you should feel good about this. I chose to stay home with my children and family. Initially, it was not a choice. I watched them grow up to become the individuals that they are today. We grew our own food, and the children had to help with chores. I believe this helped to impart a sense of responsibility and an awareness of the world around them, making good foundations for them to live by. On reflection, it was the best choice for me.
Thank you very much. And we're going to move on to our final speaker, Lana Shriver. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you for inviting me. I was an early bloomer. I became a mom, graduated from high school, and married the love of my life before I turned 18. Not a lot of my female peers furthered their education at college or university in the early 70s, so I didn't feel abnormal becoming a stay-at-home mom. Little did I realize that 40 years later, my contributions to family and community would not even remotely compare monetarily to that of my husband or workplace moms. My husband was established in a good job and could provide us with a modest new home and all the basic necessities of life. We needed only one vehicle, living in near supportive family in a friendly community. By the time we had welcomed 3 little ones into our lives, we knew we needed more space to accommodate our growing family.
Lana, I hate to interrupt you, but I do need to speak to the committee for about 10 seconds. I just got an email that there will be a vote. The vote will be taking place at 10:33. I am looking for consent that we continue to hear testimony for 20 minutes, as this will provide full consent. Please go ahead, Lana. Thank you.
Sorry. By the time we had welcomed 3 little ones into our lives, we knew we needed more space to accommodate our growing family, so we purchased a larger home. Our lives were full and busy. My husband was youth pastor at our local church. We both taught Sunday school. Our kids had lots of friends. By the time our 4th child was born, 14 years separated the oldest and youngest. We now had a newborn, an elementary school student, one in junior high, and one in high school. Life was busier still and more expensive. We were still a one-income family, but I was free to volunteer regularly. I collected funds door to door for various registered charities. I had opportunity to serve on various home school committees like SPAC and PSSC. Staying at home allowed me to be a part of all those firsts with our children. First tooth, first step, bumps and bruises, chicken pox, mumps, birthday parties, sleepovers, first dates, heartaches, picnics, sleep-in mornings, and vacations. We attended youth conventions and summer camps with our kids, going along as volunteers and supervisors. We won our first Walt Disney World vacation using cents-off coupons at our local pharmacy. Then we funded our second trip with cash that I had earned while babysitting for my husband's coworker. Finances were tight sometimes, but we were blessed with contentment. Growing family and their growing expectations were expensive, but our needs were met and often our wants as well. We grew our own garden, freezing, canning, pickling, and jamming the produce. I sewed some of our clothing. We reduced, reused, and recycled even before the slogan became popular. Breastfeeding and using cloth diapers provided us significant savings. My husband's optional workplace benefits were an added blessing. On our one income, we financed driver's ed, first cars, orthodontic braces, ski equipment, lift tickets, and even some brand name clothing for the kids as well. Our teenagers earned their own spending money, but they did not appreciate my little black book where I kept account of monies borrowed, etc. What a bonus it was when our RSP deductions were available to be a benefit on those dreaded income tax returns. We purchased payroll savings bonds to help us with unexpected expenses and those needed purchases at Christmas time. At 40, I became a stay-at-home grandmother, babysitting eventually 2 precious granddaughters. Because of financial circumstances, their moms could not be home with them full-time and could not afford daycare. When our youngest son was in grade 12, I began doing paid casual work at our local schools, in the cafeteria and library. In 2006, I was asked to work with a child with special needs. At that time, I realized how much I didn't know. So in 2007, I enrolled in an ABA, that's Applied Behavior Analysis course, at the College of Extended Learning. Post-secondary education was a prerequisite to entering the course. I had none, but with good references from the schools where I had volunteered, that requirement was waived. At 54 years, I entered a university lecture theater for the first time with fellow students younger than my children. Perseverance paid off, and at age 55, I walked the stage to receive my certificate. At age 59, I was finally awarded a permanent educational assistant position. I had said earlier that I was an early bloomer. I guess I'm a late one too. As I near retirement, I am considering a job sharing opportunity. My leaving this position, though, leaves my husband and I with the added financial burden of covering our own medical health insurance costs, no small amount. Because of my late entry into the paying workforce, I have not had time to prepare adequately for retirement in terms of CPP or independent workplace retirement plans. Had my husband not wisely prepared for his retirement, we would be in a difficult position financially as I contemplate leaving the workforce and foregoing my income. Yes, he has his OAS, his CPP, and his RIFs, but where does that leave my contributed portion? I have a OAS, but with my combined allowance of 30 years child rearing and the CPP that I've paid since entering the workforce, I receive less CPP than our medical coverage will be. I have great respect for those resourceful moms who are able to successfully wear both hats. But is there not something that our leaders today could do to allow kids to be at home with moms who are considered valuable contributors to the well-being of this wonderful land we call Canada? Who better to nourish and nurture our nature's children than those mothers who gave birth to them? Our granddaughter has now decided to leave the workforce to be with her little ones, working a small business from home. I wish her every success and trust that by the time she reaches my age in retirement, that there will be benefits in place for stay-at-home moms. My husband and I have now reversed our roles. I work 5 days a week, and he keeps the house looking good. But he's the one to volunteer, making frequent visits to the hospitals and the homes of shut-ins. He assists the pastor at our church. He does administrative work there, and he holds weekly outreach services. He performs weddings, funerals, baptisms, and baby dedications, that often for those who have no other church affiliation. He hosts fundraisers for local charities and benefits for those undergoing various medical procedures. He is a busy community worker, but if my observations are correct, it appears that in our golden years, his pension will contain substantially more gold than mine. Thank you for listening to my story.
Excellent, and thank you very much. And just Lynn, Mary, and Len, I know all of us won't be able to go home and call our moms tonight, but thank you, because the first call tonight will be to my mom to say how much I appreciate her. You women have been wonderful. We're going to start off with our 7-minute round. It's our first round, and we'll be starting with Terry. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm going to be sharing my time with Ms. Romanato, who's the Parliamentary Secretary to our Minister of Seniors. And you took the words right out of my mouth, Madam Chair. I was thinking about my mother the whole time, and thank you for those very thoughtful and inspiring presentations. My mother is the mother of 5 boys, 4 by the time she was 23, 5 by the time she was 26. And so our household was just a giant food fight. And I have 2 daughters, one who is pursuing a career, just launched her career, and the other who is a stay-at-home mom. And so, the beautiful thing about this country is that we have choice. But my question is to Lynn. And I'd ask for a brief answer, Lynn, but if you had 2 minutes in an elevator with our seniors minister, and you had to think of one priority that would assist the senior women in our country. We've heard some very stark testimony about the lack of pension support, the fact that 2 out of 3 dementia cases are women. We've heard some very stark statistics today, but if there was one thing that you could recommend to our seniors minister, and you were in an elevator with her for 2 minutes, what would you recommend?
Ouch, I'm kind of blank on that one. I was trying to figure it out myself. What can the government provide for people who are not essentially working? And probably the best thing is just to give more tax breaks for the young people who are trying and struggling, that they would have enough money. Right now, the government programs seem to be based favoring the working mother and the benefits not for the one staying at home. Like, as I was mentioning with the other one, the friend, their income is based on their benefits are based on gross income, and so they miss all the extra benefits. So that little bit would help. I'm sorry I couldn't be more knowledgeable in that area.
Thank you. Sorry, it's too close. Thank you so much for your testimony. I have to say, what fantastic women. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom as well. And so I'm the middle child of 3. I have 2 brothers, one younger, one older. So I had the great pleasure of having mom at home too, taking care of the home and so on and so forth. But when she retired at 65, she too did not have CPP or sufficient RRQ, because I'm from Quebec, contributions for her retirement. And so my dad being the working spouse, so I know exactly what you're referring to. Now, Lynn, you mentioned right now we're supporting a lot more working mothers, and there are much more women working in the workforce now than in the past. I myself am a mother of 2. I was an early bloomer as well. I had my first son at 20, the second one at 21. So they're both out of the house, and I'm able to do this job. But what we have put into place is a childcare benefit, which is a tax-free program for parents who want to perhaps stay home and raise their families and support them in that kind of regard. So I know that we've put some systems in place for families to be able to perhaps stay home, take care of the family when the children are younger. But we've also increased the CPP contributions. We know that more and more people are not getting adequate CPP contributions or not getting good private pension plans or often work in contract work. So we've increased that to 33% of contributions so that the next generation will be able to have more significant CPP contributions. But you raised a really interesting point to support stay-at-home parents, and I'll say parents because we hopefully have some men who will stay home with their children as well. What would you recommend in terms of supports? A concrete example in terms of supports that we could provide to acknowledge the contributions of a spouse staying home to raise their child or children in terms of financial supports. What would you recommend we do to provide that option? And I also want to just say, Mary, I'm also a fellow military family, so kudos to you and your family for serving our country. Today's the 70th anniversary of NATO, so I just want to thank you and thank your husband for his service to Canada. But if you could provide us some suggestions with respect to what we could do to help provide financial supports in addition to the CCB program.
Okay, we only have very short, we have about 30 seconds to respond.
Do you wish to?
I have
If
just
it's for me, I would.
I think we all have an answer, so somebody has to go.
Go ahead.
Lynn, go ahead.
No, if it's for me, I pass to the other ladies.
Mary and Lana.
Do you want to do this, Lynn?
What about a program for moms choosing to stay at home at least for their children's preschool years? Cost of daycare times the number of children times 5 years. Maybe a bond or security investment to be paid to mom without excess, maybe until 60 or 65 years, might be a suggestion. Daycare for one child costs in New Brunswick at least approximately $800 a month, probably $1,500 if you have two. So what if you multiplied that $1,500 a month by 12 months, which is $18,000, by 5 years, which is $90,000, payable with interest. And if that was held until the mother did reach retirement, if she chose to do so, $90,000 over 40 years could be a good investment.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think we're going to have to get more information on that. Excellent. I'm going to move over now to Dave Van Kesteren. You have the floor for Dave and Kelly. Okay. 5 minutes, 4.5 to 5.
I wish I had more time. There's a theme here I'm recognizing. I want to say too that my mother stayed home as well. She came to this country with 5 children. Can you imagine having to learn the language? And then she had another 5. So I'm in the back end of the 5. So I know all the stories you're talking about. There seems to be a theme though I'm hearing from all of you 3 women, and that is the role that faith played in your upbringing. Can you maybe just touch on that? Just anybody just have a quick response to that?
Primarily, having so many children so very, very rapidly caused me to not have a choice at all. I had to stay out of the workforce. At that time where we were living, there was absolutely no daycare. It was extremely difficult to get a sitter. The minute I mentioned their ages, the phone would go down, and that would be that. So I didn't have that option at all. And I knew then that I was not going to be able to go back to work. So I guess my fate was that I had a lot of children very, very rapidly, and that changed everything in my life because I did want to go back to work, but it was not.
I'm glad you mentioned fate, but I said faith. So.
Oh, faith. I'm sorry. I heard faith. Well, faith. Well, I think this lady's better to answer that. Sorry.
Well, the slogan, faith, family, and friends, is very true. Family first, I would say. But faith is a very important part of our lifestyle. It doesn't have all the answers, but it's our bedrock. I'm so grateful to have the knowledge that there's somebody bigger than me taking care of all of this. And yes, I did mention a lot of faith-based things in my story, but that is our story. We've not raised angels by any means, but I'm not sure what it would have been like if we hadn't had the faith that we do.
Lynn, that's my mother's name. Maybe you just want to touch on that as well.
Faith was very much a part of our decision, and also our daughter. She really didn't have enough money, her and her husband, to raise a family, like for her to stay home. But, you know, talking to the minister how important it was, she stayed home against our advice even. And I think that made a valuable contribution to their children, and later on she made up for it. But yes, the value of God first, family next, and then work and the rest of the world.
Thank you all for presenting. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and had a grade 10 education, and for better or worse, this is how I turned out, and my siblings. I have a quick question for you with respect to healthcare. Each of you touched on it. I know two of you are nurses. I'm a pediatric surgeon myself. With respect to your position as seniors, are you finding it challenging to access the things that you need as a family? And you all mentioned because of making a choice to stay at home, not having those additional benefits that we know do come with employment as well. CPP is one thing, but health benefits also come with employment. Do you find that a challenge for your families?
Can I answer this? Yes, I do. When you get older, it costs a lot more in drugs. I'm currently been put on a drug that I have to pay that's $5,000 a year. One of the biggest things I miss about not working is the perks that your travel medical is covered forevermore. We do not have that perk. I consider it incredible when you do, because we no longer can travel. My insurance to travel now is currently $2,000 for the year. My husband is 84. His is more. Hence, we no longer can travel because of this. But if we had had this paid for the rest of our lives, we have friends that are practically at death's door, and they're able to go to California, to Mexico, to Europe. We cannot, and that is a really
it creates an inequity in your lifestyle.
Yes,
compared to your
definitely.
colleagues.
It's a huge
I think it's
thing.
one thing that we don't appreciate as Canadians, that when you make a choice to stay with your family, which I think I've been a beneficiary of, that there are definite significant limitations that are outside of just strict financial ones.
Yes.
Thank you. I know that we are limited for time, so I'm going to pass to my colleague so that she can ask a question as well.
I'd like to thank my colleagues for allowing me to ask a question before we have to go vote. And thank you, ladies, for being with us. I wanted to ask a question to Lynn. You worked in private residences for elderly people. I know that there are people who, in my riding, work for the defense, for advocacy groups to defend the rights of senior citizens. There are people, older people, who live in private residences for senior citizens that can be subject to abuse. And because they have to be... Finally, the person that I'm thinking of had an accident after her move out of the abusive home and died. But there was no supplementary care that had been offered to her. So what do you think? Do you think that the federal government should provide supplemental help to help these people in these situations escape the difficulties they face?
My own mother is in the nursing home now, of course, and she will go through depressions and tell me how terrible people are, but when she's feeling good, then everyone's fine. And I just explained to her that what she has is almost as good as you can get. It's, I think, our age where we're going to have to worry because we won't have enough young people to take care of us. as far as I see, the government is doing a very good job in taking care of people. You can't watch everybody, but sorry I can't be more helpful than that.
Lynn, what I'm going to have to do, it is at 10:24 right now, and I've said that we'd only take up to 20 minutes. We are going to have to end today's and adjourn today's meeting. I would like to thank Lana, Mary, and Lynn. Thank you so much for your excellent work today. And I'm sorry we could not spend hours and hours with you. Today's meeting is adjourned.